I'm Lisa.
And I'm Sean.
We're a married couple, and we like to talk about the Beach Boys.
Good afternoon once again.
It's evening.
I'm not going to make any assumptions that our listeners are listening in the evening.
Well, they could be listening in the morning or overnight or in some other sense of time dimension.
It's afternoon somewhere, and this is episode 23. I think it's episode 23. Yeah, episode 23 of Two Next Podcast, and I am one of your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Lisa.
Who is also one of your hosts.
And we're still kind of jet lagged, so please excuse us for any oddity. We
just got back from a trip to London, our second trip, and our not last trip to London.
Yep.
And I should mention some pickups that we obtained in London. Those of you following on the socials already know that we did some record shopping, as one does. And there's some a few things that we picked up, obviously. I think you were the one who found all these things, too.
I think I did.
We got a British copy. Well, of course, because, when you're in England, most of the stuff you're going to find is British. But we got a British copy of the Cotton Fields single. Second pressing, because it's on a red Target label. The original Cotton Fields single in England was on a black label, but this is on a red Target. I think... Does it have a punchy outie thing?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Yeah.
So we know that this is a copy that actually sold, unlike in the United States.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if we have an American copy. I don't think we do. But I got the British copy. It has Cotton Fields on the A side, The Nearest Faraway Place on the B side. I believe it's a fold-down mono mix. It doesn't sound like a true mono mix. Very hissy sounding, too, on both of them. So I wonder, how bad the copying was. Well, you can hear how bad the copying was. There's a lot of hiss in it. But there's also an EP from, it has to have been 1977 or later. It's on the Reprise label, the Brother Reprise label, an EP that has Mona and the album version of Rock and Roll Music on the A side. And on the B side, it has Sail On Sailor and Marcella. I gotta say, the A side sounds good. The B side sounds pretty bad. I think it was pressed off center. And also could be that our copy has a little warp in it that's not apparent on the A side for some reason.
And the picture sleeve has a ridiculously bad photo of the Beach Boys.
It's almost as if the Beach Boys picked it themselves.
Which would explain why it's ridiculously bad.
Yeah, check our social medias for if you want to see what it looks like. Some of you might actually have it anyway, but still. And one thing that we absolutely needed to get in the collection, I was actually planning, I don't know about you, but I was planning to add it to the collection eventually.
Here, let's say it together. 1, 2, 3. Bug in!
The dumbest title I've ever heard for a compilation.
I mean, it's not like we needed it for the tracks because it's stuff we have already, but
of course.
It's just we needed a record that's called Bug In.
Yeah, and not only is the title weird, but the selection of tracks is weird too, because it's got Little Deuce Coupe and a bunch of deep cuts that have absolutely no flow whatsoever. It ends with I Was Made to Love Her. And somewhere in between you have things like Why Do Fools Fall in Love, You Still Believe in Me, and off the top of my head I don't remember what. You can look it up on discogs.com, of course.
And I believe I came across all of these things at a little record shop in Greenwich.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. Just a small record store, very nice. And thought it was kind of interesting that on the glass they had some wording about the shop, and it was in the same font as the Pet Sounds album, with some of the words in yellow and some in white. And it's I see what they're doing here.
Yeah. I think the name of the place is Music and Goods Exchange, and they have several locations. We might have actually been to their Soho location. We just didn't realize it.
Oh, I also wanted to bring up, since, because we last recorded in April?
Oh, you know what? Our website says, because it always says when we record the podcast episodes. So that way people have context. So episode 22 was recorded, April 27th.
Okay. So since then, I had gone to my hometown of Ocean Grove, New Jersey.
Oh, yes.
For a weekend with my mom. Also to go to the Great Ocean Grove Flea Market, which is something that happens the Saturday after Memorial Day and the Saturday after Labor Day. It's been going on like this for... the first time I went was 1990, and I'm sure that wasn't the first one. So it's been going on for that way for quite a long time. And I hadn't been there in probably about 10 years. So I thought it would be nice to go to the flea market again. And something I picked up while I was there, back when my Beach Boys knowledge really accelerated beyond just what was on Endless Summer, was when my father handed me an 8-track on the Pickwick label, an old 8-track. This was in the early 80s. It was called Good Vibrations, and just a compilation of mostly songs I was not familiar with, like Good Vibrations, Heroes and Villains, God Only Knows. So this was like my gateway drug to many other things. And my dad gave me that tape because as he said, I want you to know that Good Vibrations is more than the Sunkissed jingle, because that was about the time that Sunkissed was using Good Vibrations. I still have this battered 8-track that I played until probably if I could get an 8-track player, not that I would want one, but playing it now, it probably would sound like River Bottom Mud, but Still, that tape means a lot to me. And flipping through a box of records at the Ocean Grove Flea Market, I came across a vinyl copy, and I had to have it. I just had to have it because it looked so nice, and probably... even if the record is in terrible condition, it would play better than that 8-track tape.
It's actually in pretty decent condition.
Yeah. And it was just cool to see it in a different form. So that's something that came home with me.
You had told that story in a previous episode, and one of our listeners said that it's basically, I agree with this. It's basically Best of the Beach Boys Volume 3 without Surf and Frosty the Snowman. It's the same lineup, except I think maybe one or two songs like flip-flopped a little bit, but that's about it.
Well, it's a pretty great lineup. I mean, the only song that I already knew that was on it was Girl Don't Tell Me.
You didn't know Good Vibrations? Aside from the Sunkissed jingle?
I may have heard it, but I didn't have it. Like, I'm talking about what I actually
could listen to on demand.
What I actually had access to, which at the time I only had Endless Summer, which of course is a treasure trove in itself.
Of course.
But this was a new treasure trove that took me into other directions of, God Only Knows led me to Pet Sounds, Heroes and Villains led me to Smile, etc. So yeah, that was a pretty cool find for just a couple dollars.
Sure. And I'll have you know, I actually had to make an entry for it on Discogs.com because none of the other instances of that album matched the copy that you found.
Oh, really?
So because there are separate entries for each variation.
Well, of
this
course.
one was not, it was not in there. I'm like, oh, this isn't any of them. Oh man, now I got to take pictures of the damn thing and upload them. And
oh, please. You love doing that. Shut up.
it's seriously tedious.
Yeah,
though.
but you still love it.
Oh man.
Discogs is like one of your favorite things ever.
Well, it's a good way to keep track of the collection.
Well, it is.
That's
It
what it
is.
is. I did find some cool stuff on Discogs.com that I could buy too.
And it is nice when you're out in the wild to be able to just look it up. I mean, yeah, remember the Excel file that I still have somewhere?
Really?
I still, it's way out of date because I don't think I've touched it in like well over a decade, but...
Because the thing is, we have that thing, but Discogs.com, when you look at Discogs, you realize you didn't have what you thought you have, and you have what you didn't think you have. Like another thing we bought, another thing you found, a Beatles EP called The Beatles Hits. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, okay, this has got to be a reissue from the 80s, but still, I want to, when you go to Europe and you're from America, that's a good way to build up the EP collection. So I'm like, yeah, let's get that thing. Turns out it's from 1963.
Oh,
It's
really?
not it might be like a
Wow.
second or third pressing, but it's from 63.
And it only cost a couple pounds,
Yeah,
right?
and its sound is really good too. Whoever had it before took good care of it. But yeah, it's just fascinating what you learn, what you have when you're looking at discogs.com as opposed to just your regular list. It's like, oh, it's not a first pressing, it's a second pressing, or oh, this thing that I thought's a reissue, it's not. It's an original. But
Or conversely, like, oh, the thing that someone sold me for $50 because they claimed it was original, it's not. Hopefully that has not happened to us.
No. No, I don't think I've ever paid that much for a actually, no, I have paid that much for a single disc vinyl, and that was the Mobile Fidelity Abbey Road.
Okay, a
at
mobile
Beetlefest.
fidelity, I can see that. You're going to pay out for something like that.
Yeah. I mean, this was like 20 years ago too. So even then, having said all that, I want to mention an observation that happened to me probably about a month ago. I don't know how these thoughts creep into my mind, but there are 5 Beach Boys albums in a row that were released that have something in common. A few of these were controlled by the Beach Boys, a couple were not. Starting in 1972, you had Carl and the Passions, So Tough. Then 1973, you had Holland and In Concert. Then in 74, you had Endless Summer. And then 75, you had Spirit of America.
Mm-hmm.
All 5 of those albums released consecutively all have one very particular quality in common. Can you think of it?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah. It's something you don't really think about, but all 5 of those albums in a row, multi-disc albums. Because So Tough was paired off with Pet Sounds. Holland had an EP inside it. In Concert was a double disc, as was Spirit of America and Endless Summer. So I just thought that's interesting that all 5 of those albums released one after the other, all are 2-disc collections. So
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that. That's all. Because it was on my mind. Didn't want to forget that. That's something in all these years of fandom I just never thought about.
And kind of when you look at how at that time you think, oh, they didn't really put out much, but maybe they put out more than you thought.
Yeah, seriously. And to think that 15 Big Ones was actually thought they were thinking about making that a double album. So that would have been 6 in a row. Yeah. But anyway, having said that, do you want to introduce the topic for this episode?
Sure.
Please say yes, because I know I'm going to screw it up if I do.
Well, why do you say that?
Because I know I'm going to screw it up if I do.
Okay, so the topic is something we've talked about amongst ourselves for quite a long time. And I even have a playlist on my iTunes that I've had for quite a long time called Pet Sounds Signposts. And this is not a term that I came up with. This is a term that I had seen in discussion over the years. I don't even know who to credit it to or even what forum, but I know I've seen it brought up, where it's songs that point the way towards pet sounds. You could go back to the very beginning of the Beach Boys' career to kind of see where the foundations were, where the indications that this band was going to be more than just a couple surfing tunes and car tunes and girl tunes and beach tunes and whatever. But also, you have to consider that it's not like it's a linear direction, that there are even songs after Pet Sounds that point back towards it, or songs that could have been on Pet Sounds. Songs that have the same feel, the same vibe, the same level of artistry. And even sometimes it's not necessarily something totally driven by Brian. I mean, I think Brian is at the core of all of it because, let's face it, Pet Sounds was his baby.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the other Beach Boys had their hands in it, but not nearly to the extent of where it came from in regards to Brian. I mean, the majority of the Pet Sounds sessions were done when the rest of the Beach Boys weren't even in this country. They were on tour in Japan. So they came home and Brian's like, okay, here's the tracks, start singing. And he probably was just as blunt like that. Start singing. 1, 2, 3. So I thought we could discuss songs that pointed the way towards pet sounds, but also look back on it and still kind of follow in a lot of the same feels, the same vibes. And it could be lyrically, it could be instrumentally, it could be just the feel, just the vibe. Okay. So
I'm nodding as loud as I can. God. So we have, you are now entering pet sounds and you are now leaving pet sounds, basically.
Well, yeah, that just because Pet Sounds is already out and released doesn't mean that you can't go back to that moment.
Right. Well, then I guess we should just jump right into our what we consider to be perhaps some Pet Sounds signposts.
Well, actually, before we do that, let's kind of lay some groundwork here.
Oh, boy.
Let's talk for a moment about what is Pet Sounds. Kind of what does it represent? What does it feel like? And I'll start because you're giving me a confused look.
I'm not confused. I'm just more like, I am not prepared for this.
We've talked about this like forever. And I know I have said this maybe even on this podcast, that the thing about Pet Sounds is it is universal, that it's about longing, it's about heartbreak, it's about wishing things were different, it's about holding joy, but knowing that it might not be permanent, that love can be fleeting, and it's just all of these different feelings of confusion that aren't necessarily bad because it's part of growing up. It's part of life. It's part of like, you have to go out there and do things knowing that you take the risk of getting hurt, but you're still going to do the things. You're not going to just lock yourself in your room. Brian did in my room, but that didn't mean he was going to stay there forever. That was just part of him. It's also that you have Pet Sounds coming from a young man who was handsome, wealthy, talented, had the respect of many, many people, who was married to a cute girl, and he had a Corvette in his garage. He had a house in Beverly Hills.
With an amazing view.
With an amazing view. He had 2 dogs. He had everything.
And he had easy access to recording studios, too. You go down to the bottom of the hill, you make a left turn, you're on Sunset.
But also easy access in that, I mean, think about it. Here's this guy who is only 23 years old.
Yep.
And Capitol Records let him call the shots. That was something that did not happen in the world.
Nope.
Ever. That they gave him the reins to everything. Nobody said no to him at the time, which is just outstanding and remarkable. So this young man who had the world at his feet still felt insecure, still felt longing, still felt that he wasn't made for these times, who still felt that a brand new love affair is such a beautiful thing, but if you're not careful, think about the pain it can bring. These feelings were not far away from him. So it's like, if he could feel all these things, it's okay for everybody else to feel them too.
And what's something you pointed out to me before, probably a couple of years ago, what so many of the songs on the album, what's the first word in the lyrics?
I.
So yeah, there's a lot of Brian saying, oh my God, I'm a mess.
Which is also, at that time, I mean, it kind of parallels the Beatles in a way that about the same time, they started talking more personally, and everything wasn't just Moon and June and She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we know Rubber Soul is something that inspired Brian to do Pet Sounds. And what's the number 1 song on Rubber Soul? Norwegian wood,
We
this
need
bird has flown.
a number one song. It depends
I mean, okay, the song that was the centerpiece of her soul.
oh, that's the song that sets the mood, I think.
I don't mean track one. I mean the song that's kind of like, wow, like, you know, you're listening to a different Beatles
Yep.
here.
Oh, yeah.
Where,
But yet it's the same, you know? Because my first thought when I first heard Rubber Soul when I was a teenager back in the 80s was, this is the most un-Beatles that I've ever heard, yet it's unquestionably
well,
the Beatles.
just like how Pet Sounds is the most un-Beach Boys record, but you still know it's the Beach Boys.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's
Mhm.
still undeniably a Brian Wilson production.
Yeah.
But it's going in a different direction
Mhm.
and charting different territory and talking about things that a lot of guys back then did not feel that they could talk about, that they couldn't put their souls out there and bear it all.
Back then and today, too,
Well,
really.
today, yeah. I mean, it's better today.
It's better, yeah.
But still, it's hard for a lot of guys to do that. That's kind of what I think Pet Sounds is, just even if it's just giving permission to be vulnerable.
How about musically, then? You talked about what Pet Sounds means lyrically. What does it mean musically? I don't know if there's a way I could put it into words. I'm thinking right now what it's about, but there are no words to describe what it's about musically.
Well, that's the thing. You listen to the music, like if you listen to just the instrumental tracks, you still get it.
You do, yeah.
You still get it. You don't have to have the words to still know what's going on there.
Sure.
But it's also musically, Brian was going for things that were much deeper and richer than what you normally got on a pop record.
That's so true.
Yeah, go to Wikipedia and look at the personnel list for Pet Sounds. It's long. It's very long.
Yep, and I'm pretty sure that would have been sourced from Craig Slowinski's sessionographies.
Well, of course, as all things are.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got a tremendous amount of personnel that were used over a variety of sessions. Of course, it's not like all of those people were in the same session, but there were still a lot of people packed in Western Studio 3.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and just things that you normally didn't have on a pop record. I mean, who else had multiple types of bass instruments?
Spectre.
Shut up. Okay, but Brian did it better.
He did, yes.
Brian did it better. He did it cleaner.
And without firing a gun at people.
Well, yeah, and threatening people. Like,
Yeah.
Brian actually said please and thank you.
Yeah.
Like, we know that from the session tapes.
Yes.
Brian is very polite, which is probably a reason why they all loved working with him, because they knew he wasn't going to start screaming at them.
Yeah.
He was tough, don't get me wrong, but I mean, you can be tough and not be an ass.
Well, sure.
But he had, I mean, really a full spectrum of instruments. He had strings, woodwinds, different types of guitars, different types of basses, multiple forms of percussion, like not just a drum set, but...
And Hal Blaine's bag of tricks.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's not just a Hal Blaine thing. I think any good...
I would imagine. Yeah.
Any good drummer is going to have a resource of other ways to make sounds.
Right.
Things...
He had the Coke cans, the Sparklets water bottle,
Yeah.
and of course the tannerin.
Yeah.
Not a theremin, people. It's a tannerin. Different instrument. Different way of playing it. Meant to sound like a theremin, but anyway.
Yeah. So he was doing things that most people were not doing. And it wasn't for the sake of being different. It was because this is what he wanted. This is what was in his head. And
he wanted a horse, for God's sakes.
I mean, he wanted to create richer, deeper sounds. And you listen to the stereo tracking sessions on the Pet Sounds box set, and there it is. I still remember getting that box set in 1997 and hearing those tracks and just being amazed at what went into and the things that you didn't even hear because they were lost in the mix or hidden under the vocals. It's like, man, there was even more instrumentation there.
Yep. But why don't we get on with the discussion and start with the signposts? Like, I think you and I probably agree very much on the very first Pet Sounds signpost.
Okay, which is?
The Lonely Sea. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that is possibly the only Beach Boys track in which Brian wrote the lyrics, but somebody else wrote the music, aside from Surfin' USA, of course. But, because Gary Usher did the music on that, but the lyrics are Brian.
And also the arrangement, I'm sure, like the backing vocals, which I think is what really makes that song. And of course, let's take out that I can't stand songs that have a spoken part.
Oh, that's such a doo-wop throwback.
I know. And yeah, it was only what?
Does that even go for Child of Winter? You don't even like that one with the spoken part?
Okay, the exception is Auld Lang Syne on the Christmas album. I do love Denny's little message.
Mm-hmm. If you happen to be listening.
If you happen to be listening.
But I mean, yeah, something that early. In fact, I think that was actually recorded in 1962.
Yeah.
And it just didn't do anything with it until the Surfin' USA album.
Yeah.
So going back that far, Brian was still putting a lot of melancholy into his music. And what they did together with that was truly beautiful.
Yeah, that's an early thing. And then another something that we just discussed recently from around the same time, Surfer Girl.
Do explain.
Well, a Pet Sounds thing, again, is confusion, not taking anything for granted. And what's the chorus? Do you love me? Do you, Surfer Girl? If Surfer Girl was a Beatles song, it would have been, I love you, Surfer Girl.
Yeah.
Or I love you, you're my Surfer Girl. There would have been a lot more confidence. But here, Brian's not sure. Like he's watching this cute girl at the beach, but he's too afraid to go up and talk to her. Or he's just kind of, he's not secure knowing that she is his honey. I mean, you wouldn't think that that's a Pet Sounds signpost, but that kind of feel, I think, would put it in that category. And again, that goes way, way back.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the first songs Brian ever wrote.
Yep. He claims it's the first he ever wrote, but a lot of people disagree that it's the first he ever wrote. Oh, come on, Brian. You wrote more than that before that. And
well, we don't know. It could be that was the first song start to finish. It could be the first one that he really felt good about.
Could be.
I mean, he could have written other things that ended up in the waste paper basket. Who knows?
Sure. Yeah.
I wasn't there. I'm not going to tell him he's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. But other people who were there do say he's wrong. But anyway.
And a lot of people who weren't there also will say that he's wrong.
I can't believe that somebody who wasn't there would tell Brian would say something that Brian was wrong. Anyway.
So another song that's from fairly early, which I think everybody would agree, In My Room.
Oh, please. We don't even have to talk about that. That's just so obvious.
But we will.
Oh.
Because that's a melancholy festival right there.
And hey, that song prompted Murray to say the nicest thing he ever said to Gary Usher. Not bad, Usher.
But yeah, I mean, that was, again, a glimpse into Brian's. Well, I have always said that Brian is such a Gemini because there's two distinct sides to him.
Oh, yeah.
There's the outgoing, extroverted side, and then there's a very introverted side. Mm-hmm. In My Room is like the introvert's national anthem.
Yep.
It's also an homage to his two brothers when they would sing together in their bedroom at night. Yep.
Ivory Tower. Oh man, I wish there was a recording of the three of them singing that.
I know.
Even if it was like 1982 and it's still.
Yeah, I'm
just
surprised
to demonstrate.
With all the times that was brought up. I'm surprised that there never was any recording, or even if, say, them singing it for the 1976 special or
and
something like
you
that.
anything they would also sing Their Hearts Were Full of Spring in that room too.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, considering on the Andy Williams show, I love their performance of it because Brian looks so happy.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, that song was a big hit. People knew it. It was out there. But the fact is, he taught them how to sing it that way.
And he broke it down himself just by listening to the parts.
Yeah, when he was a kid.
Focusing in on it, yeah.
And I think he was just so proud of it, and it sounded so good.
Oh, probably my favorite thing with that song is on one of the Sunshine compilations from 2017. They're doing that at the Honolulu International Center during a rehearsal, and you can hear the crew applaud them after that.
Yeah.
It was so cool. It's the same version that's on, I think, the Good Vibration. Oh, no, it's on the concert twofer from 1990 and 2001, but they didn't leave the applause in.
So then we get into a great big Pet Sound Signpost Festival.
Oh, boy.
Today and Summer Days and Summer Nights.
Oh, boy.
There's a whole bunch of indications. It's kind of like, again, I know I'm throwing in a lot of Beatles stuff here, but it's kind of like how you listen to Revolver and Tomorrow Never Knows is like, okay, coming up next, buy a hat and hold on to it because things are going to be different from now on. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
So from Today, we have Kiss Me Baby.
Oh, ouch. Yeah.
We have She Knows Me Too Well.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
In the back of my mind.
For sure.
And okay, that's all I noted. Are there other songs from Today that you feel are signposty?
Bull Session with the Big Daddy.
Oh, shut up. Shut up.
Please Let Me Wonder, I would think.
Oh,
that should be included.
Okay.
And what's interesting is he's saying, please let me wonder. He's saying, let me bask in my insecurity here. You know?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know why I didn't have that on my playlist.
And I would say that the songs on the Beach Boys today more lyrically than instrumentally, because I know I've said this on the podcast before and in public forums that I don't think the Beach Boys today is really all that great an album, because I don't think Brian had yet really figured out what exactly he was doing yet. Summer Days and Summer Nights, he did. And I'm thinking that if you take the lyrics of the Beach Boys today and smash them in with the backing tracks from Summer Days and Summer Nights, that's what Pet Sounds is.
But thing is, with Today, I mean, again, talking about the Gemini, Today is the more introverted. This is like somebody in his room alone crying and eating pound cake.
Yes.
Whereas Summer Days and Summer Nights is more confident and out there and more bold, which also might have just been, I mean, Today, a lot of that was recorded before Brian quit the road.
Yeah.
So it's like he was still kind of, like you said, kind of figuring himself out, but also just maybe he needed a little time to just heal from the demands of the past 2-3 years.
Yeah.
With all of the touring, the recording, the interviews, the photo sessions, just all the stuff that comes with being a popular recording artist. With the added pressure of, I mean, most popular recording artists at that time had other people handing them songs and taking care of the productions and doing the arrangements.
Yeah.
People like, I don't know, Leslie Gore would just show up to a session and sing, and other people took care of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's nothing. I just pulled Leslie Gore's name out of the air just because she was a big deal at that time. I mean, that's not to say she wasn't involved in her own music. But the fact is, with most recording artists,
especially Motown.
Yeah. They didn't have the workload that Brian had.
Right.
So Brian may have needed time to just kind of settle into having what he wanted finally, and also a lot of weed.
Sure.
Let's be honest. I mean, he needed to he needed to get his head together. And that's how we got Summer Days and Summer Nights. But let's talk about today's songs first.
All right, so we got Please Let Me Wonder. What else did we have? We had
She Knows Me Too Well, Kiss Me Baby, In the Back of My Mind. Yeah. So
what more could you say?
Just those songs alone.
Yep.
I mean, what kind of kills me about She Knows Me Too Well, I know I just said let's wait to talk about Summer Days and Summer Nights, but I will bring up a song that's on that album, which is You're So Good to Me. That song and She Knows Me Too Well, both of them have got to be about Marilyn. You're So Good to Me, well, there's a little bit of insecurity there because it's still Brian. It's a fun, bouncy song. You know, you're kind of small. You're such a doll. I'm glad you're mine. So like here, Brian's got the surfer girl.
Yep.
And he's all happy about it. He's still afraid he's going to lose her, but he's happy right now. I'll take it. But She Knows Me Too Well. Good Lord. There's a lot of mixed up emotions in that song. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, this is a song about the girl that you're going to marry in a couple months.
Yep. And because we're talking about it, you might as well talk about the other observation that you've made about the song that not a lot of people might draw a connection to, but you absolutely do. And I certainly see it. I certainly see it and hear it.
Well, yeah, that to me, in my synesthesia world, this happens with a lot of music with me, but especially with Beach Boys music more than anything else, where I can hear colors and images and all kinds of things. It's like little movies in my head a lot of the time when I listen to Beach Boys songs. And this song, to me, sounds like how the ocean looks when a storm is coming, when the water looks kind of dark and there's a lot of waves and a lot of turbulence, a lot of white caps, especially on the little break in the middle, like that. I can never get past that. And anytime I see stormy water, I think of this song, which kind of goes with it, that this is not a song about smooth sailing.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a song that's very personal and very turbulent. And then you've got Kiss Me Baby, which, man, that song hurts. Yeah. Anybody who's ever had a relationship end, I mean, yeah, I have to wonder if Brian maybe thought that he should have held this song for Pet Sounds, because it sure does fit. I mean, it would need a richer backing track.
And more chord changes, I think.
Well, yeah. But man, that song just kills. And then In the Back of My Mind, what do you have to say about that?
Well, for one thing, what's the first word of In the Back of My Mind?
I.
And then when you think about it, that could have been Dennis's vocal for Pet Sounds. It was supposed to be I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, but...
Well, the thing is, that song had to have been sung by Brian.
Yeah, but In the Back of My Mind, though. Ooh.
Yeah, In the Back of My Mind, it's...
Just let the song speak for itself, maybe. Everybody pause the podcast and go listen to In the Back of My Mind. Ideally, the mono version, because the stereo version, there are a couple of things kind of missing from that. Mono version, check it out. Not Brian's 1970-something remake that was on some versions of No Peer Pressure. But
well, the thing about In the Back of My Mind, too, is that it's definitely a Pet Sounds signpost in that it's lyrically on target, but also instrumentally. It has kind of an interesting, pretty little thing going on. Then at the end, there's this whole little orchestral moment, and it's like, okay, where is this going? And then it ends. Yeah. It's like, wait, what's that? I mean, it's almost like Brian was really starting to get ready for Pet Sounds.
And it's interesting because basically, the lyrics of In the Back of My Mind pretty much say what you said about Brian as a person when he did Pet Sounds, about how he has so much, but despite all that, there's this insecurity going on. That's exactly what the lyrics say.
How's it? I'm blessed with everything.
Yep.
Yeah. So happy a time that I break down in tears. In the back of my mind, I still have my fears.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, I don't think ever took anything for granted. I don't think he ever thought everything's great. And I mean, it's kind of sad. Like, I hope he really was able to enjoy things, but he wasn't afraid to admit when he didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
Before we get into Summer Days and Summer Nights, Guess I'm Dumb.
Guess I'm Dumb. First thing I think of is the music, the backing track. There's no way in hell you cannot say, oh, this is Pet Sounds coming up. This is pointing the way toward Pet Sounds.
Especially the middle part.
Yeah.
That middle break where it's like...
It plays the melody of the verse once, and then it plays it again in a completely different key. That is so Brian.
With the saxes. There's a whole bunch of saxes going on there.
Yep.
And again, it's that kind of... I mean, where else have we seen Brian use the word dumb?
Dumb angel.
Dumb angel.
So it's a smile signpost too.
Yeah, I mean, you could, maybe, but...
And the lyrical themes too. The way I act doesn't seem like me, doesn't seem like me, but hey, no disrespect meant to Russ Titleman, but hey, I'm not on top like I used to be. That's a theme that would be recurring for Brian for decades.
Well, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, again, he never took it for granted, even though he was on top.
But what's interesting is, okay, it's kind of a lyrical juxtaposition to, in the back of my mind, it's like, oh, I have everything I could possibly want, but there's still something wrong. I'm still not quite comfortable yet. Guess I'm dumb. He's saying, I'm stupid. I'm a jerk. And I've done things wrong. I don't care. I guess I'm dumb, but I don't care. So that's an interesting little juxtaposition that I never thought of until literally now.
Well, maybe that's why Brian never recorded it himself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
as far as we know, yeah.
Why he gave it to Glenn Campbell.
Yep.
And how about that Glenn Campbell song it's called Strong.
Yes.
The song that Brian contributed to for that Glenn Campbell tribute album, where it's like they took Glenn Campbell recordings and overlaid different parts, tracks, contributions from other artists, and how that song basically has a Guess I'm Dumb moment in it, which is just amazing.
Actually, that whole version of that song is a big Guess I'm Dumb moment. The original, not so much, but the one that Brian worked on, they redid it much like that. And Brian, I think Darian was on that, and a couple of other people that we know and love from Brian's post Beach Boys work. I don't remember who, though. I'm pretty sure Darian was on it.
And then we have Summer Days and Summer Nights.
Yeah.
From that album, I hold up California Girls, Let 'Em Run Wild, Summer Means New Love.
Yes.
And not on that album, but very close to it, The Little Girl I Once Knew.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So Summer Means New Love. I have that here because it's basically...
Let's Go Away for a While.
Yeah, it is. It's like the prequel to Let's Go Away for a While, the cousin to it, however you want to put it. But it is definitely related in every possible way. Like that could have easily been on Pet Sounds. But then you have the trifecta of California Girls, Let 'Em Run Wild, and The Little Girl I Once Knew. Listen to all three of those songs in a row.
If you survive.
And then get back to me.
Yeah. And really, I think just about the entire Summer Days, Summer Nights album, except maybe I'm Bugged at My Old Man, the backing tracks, by that time, Brian had everything nailed. He had it down. Those could have easily been Pet Sounds tracks. Easily. The backing tracks could have been. I mean, even just like with Pet Sounds, because on Pet Sounds you had That's Not Me, which was basically just the Beach Boys and Terry Melcher, I think, maybe Ron Swallow. Girl Don't Tell Me, just the Beach Boys and I think Ron Swallow. So even on both of those albums, you have the Beach Boys performing as their own unit at some point without the Wrecking Crew.
But I mean, you listen to California Girls and Let 'Em Run Wild, the track only, and he's up to the Pet Sounds level of production there.
Absolutely.
I mean, California Girls, again, yeah, one of the greatest things Brian ever did was arrange saxes.
Oh, those are some pretty good saxes, yeah.
And Let 'Em Run Wild, you don't even need to hear the lyrics to know that there's some trouble going on here.
And you got that diminished chord at the end of the chorus. Oh.
But I mean, there is some pain and heartbreak in that song.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I heard this a long time ago, and I've heard it debunked by people I respect, but I still can't get the thought out of my head that song is somewhat inspired by when Brian found out that Marie was cheating on Audrey. And it's just, I mean, I don't know.
Who would have an affair with that man?
I don't know. Because again, that song has so much hurt in it and anger that Brian that may have been like the last straw for him. That like, okay, this woman has been by your side and you've put her through so much, and then you do this to her. I mean, I don't know. It's been debunked by people I respect, but I can't get that thought out of my head that may have been inspired by true events. But there's some power in that song, and it's always been one of my favorites. And The Little Girl I Once Knew, that's a happier song. So it's not so much Pet Sounds in terms of the lyrics. The instrumentation is happy too. But again, it's the depth of it, the richness, that especially the end, just the building. I mean, this is Brian's wall of sound, which is a hell of a lot better than Phil Spector's wall of sound.
Oh, any day.
Because it's clear and bright and sharp and all kinds of stuff is happening. And it's wonderful. So that's what I got for leading up to Pet Sounds. So let's move to Beyond Pet Sounds.
Ooh, Beyond.
And why don't you start, since you said you had more to say in this category?
Well, yeah, because Pet Sounds, even though that's, Brian's masterpiece and everything, he wasn't done saying what he had to say. Will he ever be done saying what he has to say? Probably not. Probably not. He will leave this earth not being done. And it definitely shows. It shows in the rest of his Beach Boys tenure. It shows in his solo tenure. Yeah, I have a list here of almost an album's worth of potential songs that Brian did, some of which you're not going to be familiar with because there are certain waters you don't venture into. I know that there's one that you and I both agree on. I know that for a fact. It's from the 88 album. There's So Many.
Oh my God.
And the thing is, really, the 88 album, if it were orchestrated with real instruments, it would be a classic Brian 65-66 sound.
Well, yeah.
But because it's essentially just layers of synthesizers, it sounds very 88.
Yeah.
But
unfortunately.
But the thing is, you can definitely hear something that would have happened in Western Studio 3.
Yeah. And even though it's not like Brian was trying to copy the Pet Sounds sound, there's little moments, like the little percussive sound that almost sounds like the Sparkletts water bottle.
Oh, yeah.
But there's just so much longing. And for that to come from a man who was in his 40s,
yeah,
it's like, dude, you're still longing. You're still yearning for something. Yep. It's just like, you just want to hug him.
I'm telling you, he was never done saying what he had to say, and he's still not done. And also from the 88 album, I think it's very obvious that it's definitely a Pet Sounds, You Are Now Leaving post, I guess. Baby, Let Your Hair Grow Long. Tell me that is not a sequel to lyrically not a sequel to Caroline No.
Yeah, Brian sure did not dig short hair on girls, did he?
Oh man, because yeah, let me pull up the lyrics here. I wish you'd listen when I tell you now, baby, let your hair grow long. It's not too. Oh, this here. It's not too late to have another date. You want another date with me? Don't cut your hair. It's like, ooh, man.
Yeah.
I can see just the way you used to be. That's Caroline No right there. That's the little girl I once knew.
Yeah.
That's all dressed up for school, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, there's something missing with you. Oh yeah, absolutely. And thing is, if you think about the backing track to that song too, it definitely has, again, albeit through synthesizers, the same sound that Brian was well known for.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, there's still some new twists to it that you just never really heard.
Yeah,
with
I mean,
Brian
it's
before.
still it's a more contemporary sound. It's a more mature sound, but
And he was still innovating musically.
absolutely.
Oh,
I mean, that's the thing. If he had been healthy, healthy physically and mentally, I mean, that's the thing. He would have been producing music like that all through the 80s.
if he had been healthy mentally, we wouldn't have a podcast.
Well, I mean, if he was well, he could still be Brian, but I get what you're saying.
Mhm.
But do you get what I'm saying?
I guess so.
Yeah.
And I was debating whether or not to include this, but I really have to, especially because of some listening I did during, I think, our flight back from London, Mount Vernon and Fairway. Because, oh my God, that when you listen to that thing, that the story, that is a guy screaming for help. It really, really is. It's very heartbreaking. Oh,
That's kind of why I don't listen to it, because
man.
I've heard it and
yeah.
it's a bit much.
Yeah, I mean, I rarely voluntarily listen to it. Really, if I hear it, it's because it comes up on shuffle, or maybe it's on the Beach Boys channel on Sirius XM. Which, by the way, Endless Summer Quarterly is hinting, not explicitly stating, but hinting that might become a regular thing every summer. But yeah, it's just like, oh my God, somebody get in here and save this guy before it's too late. That is the message that I'm getting. And kind of similar to that, and continuing with the voice of Jack Riley, a song that I'm going to kill off half our listener base right now, where our numbers are going to fall.
What?
I cannot stand A Day in the Life of a Tree. I hate that song so much, but I had to include it because, again, this is basically someone saying, look at me, I'm not in good shape. I'm not in good shape right now. And, disguised as a environmentally conscious kind of song.
Well, it's also from around from that era, Till I Die.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
which somehow I don't have on my list, and I'm going to write it down right here.
Yeah, because Till I Die, I mean, we know that was when Brian was, I mean, I don't think Brian was necessarily suicidal in that he was actually making plans. I think he just felt like he was just going to not exist anymore. Like, almost like that suicide would happen to him instead of him doing it to himself.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or that he was just going to die.
Yeah, and this is another thing in which Brian, you can't necessarily rely on him to be a good source, because he said on at least one occasion that although the thought crept into his mind from time to time, he never really took it seriously. But in the book, The Wilson Project, it actually talks about an actual suicide attempt when he and Landy were out in the ocean swimming.
Oh, yeah.
And he decided, I'm going to swim right out and just die and and
Yeah.
just escape from everything.
Well, that may have been getting away from Landy, too.
Yeah.
Away to get away from Landy.
Well, yeah.
But, I mean, I'm thinking more in the 69 to 71 period.
Yeah.
Where, like, was it in I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, when Marilyn is talking about that song. And that's the thing. It's like Brian was feeling these feelings, but instead of actually planning suicide, he wrote a song about it. Like, he put the feelings into a song, and how Marilyn was just beside herself that he could do that, he had that ability.
And David Leaf wrote about that in the Good Vibrations box set liner notes. He's basically saying rejoice that Brian had that ability to do that, to express his feelings that way.
Well, yeah, and on the Beach Boys channel, there was a clip of Bruce Johnston that they would usually play before they played Till I Die, where Bruce also joins in that chorus of just being amazed that Brian could put his feelings into music like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a short song and it's very brief in terms of words, but yet you get what he's feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, since I decided to take the floor here, I'm going to tell this story. May have told it before. Don't think I did. And I hear a lot of clicking, so I'll have a little drink. 2 Beach Boys moments that I very, very clearly remember. Of course, one was the December 24th, 1990, listening to the 1990 CD. That sticks in my memory and always will. I remember everything about that moment. The other thing that I remember deeply was the first time I heard Till I Die. And it was when I got the Good Vibrations box set. I wanted to hear Surf's Up because I had heard it a few years earlier on the radio. And I wanted to hear it again because I remember it being a really cool song. So I queued up Surf's Up and I was just doing something on my computer and I just kind of lazily let the CD play out. And when I heard Till I Die, I just froze. And I just thought, what was that? And I had to backtrack to it. I listened to it again and the sun was just about ready to set. So you had kind of that golden hour kind of thing going with that level of sunlight coming in through the window. And I remember I queued it back up to Till I Die on disc 3 of Good Vibrations, the last track on the disc. And I just remember just sitting on the floor right next to the speaker and thinking, this is so heartbreaking, but at the same time, it's possibly the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life.
With me, when I first heard it, it made me very, very sad. But then sometime later, you pointed out something that helped kind of lift this song for me and made it something that I can appreciate a lot more and not be sad by. That near the end, Pipeline.
I don't know why more people don't notice that it's that Carl is essentially singing Pipeline.
It just kind of lifts it a little bit. Like, okay, this isn't anything to be afraid of. I mean, it's sad, but it's not devastating.
I mean, I think it helps that we all knew at the time that Brian was going to be okay.
Well, yeah.
We knew. Like, this was when you and I were listening to this stuff. We're much younger than most other fans, seemingly. So yeah, we already knew. Hey, Brian was on his way to something good. He'd be okay.
And also another thing that helped me with this song was hearing Steve Desper's mix of it on Endless Harmony, where he makes, for those who haven't heard it and really go.
If you're listening to this podcast, you've probably heard it.
But it's just that much longer beginning that just basically revels in how beautiful the backing music was for that song. Yeah. Like it's Brian's just pondering the universe. I mean, it's kind of like how you listen to Mrs. O'Leary's Cow from 1966 and it's deeply frightening and disturbing. But then when you listen to it, when Brian did it in 2004, it's like, okay, it's okay.
It's the same music and the same arrangement and everything, yet somehow it's just so much more positive.
Well, because he had more positive circumstances.
Could be. But also, we're talking about Till I Die, and I probably, along with many, many, many other fans, thought there's no way Brian could ever do another Till I Die, especially these later years.
Oh boy. I know where you're going.
He made the biggest ass out of us in 2007 with that demo that was posted on his website. Demo.
You're talking about Midnight's Another Day.
Midnight's Another Damn Day.
I know people at the time talked about it's like a trifecta of I just wasn't made for these times, Till I Die, and then Midnight's Another Day. You listen to those three, oh man.
Wow. Oh, good grief.
Well, I mean, the several times we saw that done in concert, I could not get through that without sobbing. Just hearing Brian right there in front of me sing, all these people, they made me feel so alone.
Oh.
Good Lord. Oh, man. With all those vocals building up. I mean, the connection I make there is from Hair. How dare they try to end this beauty? I mean, it's the same feeling.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like how could people do that to Brian? And you just have to, what was he thinking when singing that song in the studio, singing it live? Like, who was he thinking of? I mean, there's so many possibilities.
Oh, yeah. And of course, you can also think, well, all these people that made him feel so alone probably didn't know that they were and didn't even intend it.
Well,
but
of course not. Of course
there's
not.
a saying that says your perception is your reality.
Yeah.
And I think there might be a lot of that with Midnight's Another Day.
But again, Brian survived.
Yeah.
He made it to the dawn.
He did. He absolutely did.
But that song, that is crushing.
Yeah. And a song that crushes me, and I don't even like to listen to it, even though it's a beautiful song. And I know what you tell me about it, that it shouldn't crush me, but it is definitely a Pet Sounds throwback in many ways, and that's Summer's Gone.
Well, it actually, that's a part of another trifecta. The three songs that end, That's Why God Made the Radio. From There to Back Again, Pacific Coast Highway, and Summer's Gone. That's a Pet Sounds little moment right there. Because all of those songs have those I mean, yeah, From There to Back Again. How does that song begin? I mean, we're not talking about I here. Why don't you run away and spend some time with me? And it's just, wouldn't it be nice if we were older?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's another longing song, and it's just so beautiful. It may not feel exactly like Pet Sounds, but it's got the emotion in it.
Oh, the emotion is certainly there.
And then Pacific Coast Highway, it's, again, same kind of thing. It just has kind of just wishing things were different. And then you go into Summer's Gone. So why don't you talk a little bit about Summer's Gone? Because I want to drink some water.
Oh, no, just the instrumentally, it sounds like it's another Caroline No. And just, I don't know if I want to talk about it really, because I really don't like it. It's just too sad for me. It really is, because it's like Summer's, and also just knowing that Brian had wanted the album to be called Summer's Gone.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, yeah, we're done. Beach Boys are over. Bye-bye.
Which, I mean,
I don't think That's Why God Made the Radio is a better title, by the way. That's just too awkward and too forced. But
it is a beautiful song.
It's a great song. I love it so much.
But it would have been fine, because it's like, for all intents and purposes, that was the end of the Beach Boys. I mean, that is how it should have been. I mean, yeah, I don't see it as sad, because Summer's gone, but it's going to be back.
Providing the sun doesn't go into supernova.
Well, then we'll all be dead, and then nobody cares. But it's like, Summer's going to come back. It's okay. It has to end, because that's just how it is. If it never ended, then you wouldn't appreciate it. It's got to go away so that it can come back and be wonderful again.
Oh, believe me, there are a lot of things I appreciate, despite never them having gone away.
And I mean, I love the little tribute to Carl in it.
Oh, man.
You know,
it's so heavy.
Just those words when Carl told Brian he was going to go, and Brian says...
Yeah, he said something to Brian like, I don't think I'm going to be here for very long.
And Brian's like, I think I'll stay.
I mean, I think I'll stay a while.
Yeah.
It might have been Brian being over literal, at the time, or it might have been Brian thinking, being very deep. You never know with him.
I know. But either way, it's fine. And that is very, very Pet Sounds. And if you want to bring in a little smile-ish thing, what do you hear at the very end?
You hear kind of like a little wind chimey kind of thing.
You could go off and spend a lot of time pondering that.
Yeah.
But no, those 3 songs, for me, that's the album. I mean, there's good stuff on that album, but man, those 3 songs, that's the Pet Sounds moment right there. That is Brian.
Yeah. Oh, very.
And for people who doubt that he produced that album, listen to
that. At least those tracks he produced. Come on. There are a couple of more songs that I kind of figured were Pet Sounds throwbacks that you probably have never heard. And we're digging into what we like to call Dutch imports for this. From Brian's unreleased second album, Sweet Insanity, Water Builds Up. It's one of those songs that's all up-tempo, happy sounding, but the lyrics are very, man, I have it hard. So many times I had that hopeless feeling, no kind of booze or medicine works at all. Oh, man. And water builds up, water boils over. Oh. And at the same time, you have this kind of bouncy, up-tempo, happy little backing track, not too dissimilar from that hidden jangly piano in the background of the I Just Wasn't Made for These Times chorus. When there's no doubt that I Just Wasn't Made for These Times is all melancholic. But yeah, you have the in the background. And Water Builds Up is kind of like that, but much more obvious. There's no subtlety whatsoever with that. Man, I really hope that some version of that comes out, aside from that the verses from Let's Go to Heaven in My Car. No, because that is a shame that song never came out, at least so far. And also from Sweet Insanity, Do You Have Any Regrets? And it sounds very Copacabana.
Any regrets about our fight?
But the thing is, and I always, whenever I listen to like traded tapes or something, I would fast forward over that because I was like, oh, this song's so stupid. Until I heard a version released on blue vinyl by one Darian Sahanaja. The story that I heard is that Bob Haynes gave Darian a copy of Sweet Insanity, and Darian got back to him and said, there's one song in particular that is so classic Brian. It's just screams everything you ever wanted to know about Brian. And Bob Haynes is like, okay, Someone to Love, Water Builds Up, Don't Let Her Know She's an Angel. And Darian said, do you have any regrets? And Bob said, how do you mean? And Darian said, well, I'll re-record it for you. So he recorded his own version, and it sounds like it could have come from Pet Sounds. And it is definitely very Brian. But if you listen to the lyrics, do you have any regrets about last night? Do you think I was wrong and you were right? Well, I do. And please let me show you how I'm sorry. Lyrically, this is Kiss Me Baby all over again. And what Darian heard was Pet Sounds, really. Anything off of Pet Sounds. So I kind of had to include that. Everybody check out Darian's version. I was lucky enough to actually find a copy on eBay probably about 5 years ago on X Records, because of course it's on X Records. And it's probably on YouTube somewhere as well. We'll link it in the show notes if it is indeed on YouTube. One other thing I wanted to mention, a tune that I don't think gets enough attention. It's on No Peer Pressure, Half Moon Bay. That is such a gorgeous tune. And I'll tell you why I think of it as a Pet Sounds throwback. Because you listen to that with your eyes closed, you feel like you are being driven somewhere nice, somewhere pleasant. The sax solo on that, just so gorgeous. It's the exact same feel that I get from listening to Summer Means New Love and Let's Go Away for a While. I feel like I'm being driven somewhere out west, possibly to a coast, in the sunset, and that it's going to be a good night, a pleasant night.
Well, speaking of all of that, from No Peer Pressure, you also have Somewhere Quiet. which is Summer Means New
Love.
Love with lyrics. And the lyrics on that, you've got like the chorus, I want to take you somewhere quiet so I can hear what's in my heart. Are you as real as I imagine, or just the one who plays the part? Yeah, we already said that musically it was Pet Sounds, but these lyrics, again, bring in that kind of melancholy, longing, I love you, but I don't have you kind of thing.
Yeah.
So is that your list?
There's one more.
Okay.
And there's one more, and it's another one of these heartbreaking things. It's not one that I skip, but it's not written by Brian. It is a cover. Just Once in My Life.
Oh,
before I heard 15 Big Ones, I heard all of it before I really knew a lot of the Brian Wilson story. Pretty early in my fandom, like around 1989, 1990, I heard 15 Big Ones from a library copy that I borrowed. And just Once in My Life, all I could think of was Brian is still broken. I knew enough to know that he was not in a good place in 1976.
No.
And the picture of him on the album cover also proved that he was not in a good place. His vocals on the album sounded terrible, generally. And all I could think of was, this is Brian, kind of like I said with Mount Vernon and Fairway. He is pleading for help.
Yeah.
Just once in my life, let me get what I want. And I thought it was a Brian original because I didn't know that it was a Righteous Brothers cover. And I didn't yet look at the writing credits. So I didn't know it was a Goffin and King tune.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's the closing track, too, that this is the last thing you hear.
Goffin, King, and Spector, according to this.
Which means Spector didn't do a damn thing. Yeah, he threw his name on his own productions.
Yeah,
That's
right?
also why Chapel of Love has Phil Spector's name on it, because he produced the original version.
Yeah.
Not the Dixie Cups version, but a couple of versions that came before that. The thing is, the last thing you hear with the big Brian's Back album is this heartbreaking plead. Oh, man. It's just, it's so sad.
All right. Well, let me raise spirits a little bit.
Yes, please.
Because I've got two more. One might seem a little bit out there, but I got to say it. I Got Plenty of Nothing from the Gershwin album.
Oh, man. I can kind of dig that.
Well, the reason being is that, it's heavy on the bass harmonica, which, as we know, was another favorite instrument of Brian's on Pet Sounds. There's definitely ties to Smile there too.
Oh yeah.
But it's just more, I think it is a relative of the Pet Sounds track. And it's also part of Pet Sounds was Brian playing around in the studio with different instruments, different combinations of instruments, different sounds, sound effects, taking something like a water bottle and using it, or two dogs, or just using different things and playing with the studio, playing with just everything at his disposal. And I feel like I Got Plenty of Nothing definitely goes along with Trombone Dixie as well. Just him playing around with a lot of different sounds that he likes. I mean, the difference with this was that he's working with an established tune. So he's not just making something up or throwing down sounds that don't really have a distinct melody or a plan or anything, but still, it's that same kind of work ethic. So there's that. And then my final thing, a song that Brian had absolutely nothing to do with, but yet I feel like the vibe of Pet Sounds is still there. Leaving This Town.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, because of course, what's the first word in Leaving This Town? Long. I thought it was.
Or is there an implicit I in there?
I always heard I long to see you, but look up the lyrics. Well, I see an I there.
Yeah.
I long to see you, oh my love, I want to feel you, yeah.
I love to see you, oh my, no. It's like, dude, just copy it from the lyric sheet that comes with the album.
So my point is, okay, yeah, instrumentally, it's got kind of some dated stuff in there. So it's not like totally of Pet Sounds quality. But like when it comes back from the instrumental part, woke from a dream to see reflections all around me. Duh. Just everything coming back in. It's like, man, woke from a dream to see reflections all around me of my reality. I mean, it's just, yeah, that song is killer. It's about somebody who just, I mean, literally their friends have all left. They don't, people have split off, moved away, are distant for whatever reason. I mean, you could have somebody sitting right next to you and they can still be distant. And yeah, even though Brian had nothing to do with it, writing, producing, arranging, performing, it still fits into the feel.
I'm going to have to consider this because I don't know if I've ever said this to you before, which is weird because we've known each other for quite a few years now. But I always kind of imagine in my head what existing Beach Boys songs could be used to put together a Beach Boys collaborative equivalent to Pet Sounds. And this could possibly be a consideration for that. So it's not just the Brian Wilson show. Sure, you could allow a couple of Brian tunes here and there. But yeah, I'm thinking, okay, so whereas Pet Sounds had Sloop John B., let's throw Cotton Fields here instead. And let's use The Nearest Faraway Place in place of Let's Go Away for a While.
Let's not. Please, let's not.
All right, fine. And use Forever or Our Sweet Love in place of God Only Knows.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, is Brian the only person who could ever make a Pet Sounds?
Everybody has a Pet Sounds. Everybody does.
Yeah.
It might be a musical Pet Sounds. It might be some other way. It depends on what it is you do to express yourself, whether it be music, whether it be arts or crafts, whether it be a sport, whether it be writing code, whether it be just possibly just walking and exploring.
Yeah. Well, why don't we end on that?
Okay.
Very thoughtful thought.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for considering that to be thoughtful. So we certainly welcome input from people who listen. And if you listen to our closing fadey outy thing, you will hear how you can reach us on the various social media and the emails as well. Simply because I'm still jet lagged and I can't think of what our email address is. And so yeah, what are your thoughts? What could be Pet Sounds signposts and Pet Sounds throwbacks and all that? I got nothing further to say other than if you really want to hear my voice more, you can listen every 15th of the month to my weird record collection, available on every podcast supplier. And anything else you want to throw in?
Nah.
Okay.
Nah.
All right, Sean.
Lisa.
Thank you for listening to the TuneX podcast. Please leave us a review at Apple Podcasts or iTunes.
You can hear us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and just about every other provider out there. If TuneX isn't on your favorite provider, please let us know.
You can email us at tunexpodcast@gmail.com. Our website, which includes the show notes, is tunex.fab4it.com. Fab4IT is spelled F-A-B and then the number 4 and then I-T.
Feel free to connect with us on social media. TuneX is on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram and Twitter, both under the handle of TuneX Podcast.
Our opening and closing theme, Melody 10, was written and performed by Scattered Frog.
We'll talk to you next time, friends. Until then, don't back down from that wave.